Hey everyone. So this is my first video in a long time. And I feel compelled to speak. I feel compelled to express myself. I've been through a lot of changes since the last time I was making videos. Although it's funny because I feel just as camera shy as ever. But I'm just gonna I'm just gonna talk through it, try to relax, forget that the camera's on me, and just speak unconditionally. It's like I'm at a point in my life where I have to express myself. I have to communicate. It's just part of being alive, being part of this world, taking responsibility, standing up for what's right, and not as some kind of like self-righteous activist who's trying to impose what's right or wrong on people, but also within my own life, standing up for what's right in terms of how I live as well. For so many years, I was so confused and angry, mainly angry. But anger, of course, clouds your vision and makes you a confused person. And this is the reason why I kind of teetered off making videos. And, if you look at a lot of my previous content, I was you can see it. The anger was there in all my videos, and it really compromised my ability to speak. Not that I didn't have insights and have some clarity, but your anger always taints even the things that you think you see clearly. And because I didn't see all of my anger, I couldn't fully allow myself to recognize and admit the simple difference between right and wrong. I'd been accustomed to accepting anger in myself, anger and all the emotions that come with anger. I'd become so accustomed to accepting that within myself that I wasn't able to clearly identify it and see it in the world around me, which, created an experience for myself where I couldn't allow myself to really see the simple difference between right and wrong and act on it, let alone do anything about it. And this started when I was quite young. Obviously with my parents, mainly my mother, but my father as well, and ironically enough, it began out of love for both of them, but they were angry people. My mother was a very angry person, very emotional, and so was my father. And, out of love for them, it's like you copy all of their behaviors, including what they also think is right and wrong within their anger. So even the love and affection and all kinds of things that I learned, even all the positive emotions and expressions that I learned were out of anger. The dehumidifier just went on, so I hope that doesn't make it too noisy. And it's like a seed was planted in me at a young age. And we become so accustomed to all of the other emotions and feelings that we like to create and live in that are really nothing more than an escape from that anger. And so you can really fool yourself into all kinds of things, into thinking you're having a positive um, or exciting experience, or an experience of love, of joy. All of these things that when you really look at them, they're all just born out of this initial anger, which is really like a form of a trauma. You know, when you learn anger and hatred from your parents, it's traumatizing. It's devastating for children. But because the parents also don't recognize that, they simply encourage you to go into your positive emotions. Like I say, it's just like the other side of the coin, two sides of the same coin as anger. And we call it love and joy and all these things. And so in this world, you're influenced to move in that direction and to basically essentially nurture your anger through nurturing that emotional self that you create out of anger, that has all these emotions and feelings, negative and positive. And next thing you know, you think it's you, because that's all you've ever known. And you know, within that, it's like we don't live. We don't actually experience anything real, because we just live in that anger that creates all of these, again, this emotional feeling experience that's all fueled by thoughts. You know, anger creates this kind of depression and anxiety where you're always in this constant loop of thoughts, bouncing back and forth between the past and the future. And none of it's real. You know, angry people live in their heads. They live in their imaginations. And if there's one thing I've learned in this life, it is that all thoughts are all lies all the time. Now, my eyes were open to that years ago, but again, the anger was it was very much entrenched. I think it was entrenched at a deeper level than I really even understood. Because again, it was mainly the positive stuff that was like the hardest stuff to question and to challenge. You know, we like to challenge and question all of our negative feelings and emotions and thoughts, but we tend to not do the same thing with positive thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And so, you know, it's like I tried so many things over the many years. You know, I would take deep dives into myself. I would write extensively. I mean, I did lots of vlogs in the past as well, but mainly writing, like extensive amounts of writing. You know, self-help courses, all kinds of things. And it's like I couldn't change anything. It's like I could change certain things, but they were very superficial. And I could go through lots of information and detail and have insights and, oh, look at that, I learned this amazing thing about myself. But it's like everything was always on the periphery. Nothing ever kind of got to the core of what I was really experiencing within myself, which I've come to find at this time in my life is like extremely simple. But that's how extensive the trauma goes, and that's how extensively we are influenced also by the world around us. I mean, as long as we're holding on to any kind of anger or fear, it's really the same thing. Then you allow yourself to be, then you're open to the influence of the world. You're susceptible to it in some form or another. So it's like, no matter what I did to try to get out of this anger, I would always be influenced. Now, did some of the things that I did over the years help and work? Yes, they did. I did learn some tools that I was able to improve my life with, and in a way build like the building blocks and the foundation that one day, if I was to ever, no, how can I say? Is like I supported myself to one day be able to realize my anger and break out of it. I was able to give myself a foundation to build a kind of life for myself where I could eventually realize it, which involved mainly taking self-responsibility for my own life. So it's not as though I did nothing for years and I was completely lost. I mean, I like I say, I worked, I applied myself, I tried everything. But it's like I just could never fully break through. And boy, it took a lot. I mean, I had to really like live and experience this world. That's the thing, is we like to try to be able to figure things out like on paper or in our head. And that's fine. It's fine to use writing and talking and words to try to understand yourself. But ultimately, like, you have to live life. You can't live in this safe world of everything's just on paper, where it's very kind of nice and controllable and it's all just kind of very virtual. You have to actually get out there and do things in this world and try things and make mistakes. Have goals, even if they're false, try to do things and fail, see what works and what doesn't. So, just normal stuff, having jobs, having relationships, studying things, making a home for yourself, So I can say that during these last many years, like, I've really lived in terms of taking action, and yet I wasn't fully living. I was attempting to live. I was doing everything I could to get to a point in my life where I really could break through and live. But again, it's like I was always, it's like this anger always managed to stick with me. Until I had basically learned enough lessons to start to see things clearly, I would judge myself a lot for my anger. I would blame myself a lot. I would blame my behavior and what the anger would do to me. I would fall into traps like guilt. I would allow others to influence me with guilting and shaming. And I would be unfair to myself in terms of thinking like as though I'm the only one with anger, So I would judge myself extensively as though I didn't learn this from the world, as though I wasn't influenced by others to see what I see and to live the way that I live. And it took some experiences in my life of experiencing like the full, like almost the full extent of where anger can go. Like, I had to basically experience some really evil shit in my life to see who I am and to evaluate who I am. And without getting into it, I've had some great highs. I've done some really cool things that I don't want to say I'm proud of, but I'm accomplished. I built a good life for myself and my daughter. But I've also had some extreme lows, and I've experienced, without getting into it, some of the worst things you could ever imagine. And through those experiences, I was pushed to the brink of my anger and sanity. You know, not that I was like total mental basket case, but yeah, I was rattled to the point where through what I had experienced, I was, you know, the anger was fully stimulated, triggered, exposed. You know, I finally got to a point in my life where it was actually like, it's like I was wearing it on my sleeves, to the point where I could be fully aware of it. And with the extreme injustices in my life that I'd experienced, you know, it's like I could easily justify that anger. You know, when you have some of the worst things you could imagine done unto you, it does force a point of having to basically decide who you're going to be, because when you're faced with such an extreme situation, I mean, you can either do one of two things, which is to match that anger and use it as an excuse to also be evil, you know, to try to get back at people, to try to get revenge, to become fully hateful and evil and spiteful. And it's not as though there were times that I didn't feel like I wanted to do that, but you know, it's like no matter what, I could never bring myself to go over the edge that way, we'll say. And you know, because I haven't allowed myself to go over the edge, it's afforded me some stability to simply, you know, walk my life, ask questions, investigate more, you know, maybe more seriously and earnestly than I ever had before, and maybe even with more clarity than I ever had before. Because I really was naive in the way that I would judge myself. It's like I would mainly only just see my own anger and my own evil, and that didn't really allow me to fully recognize that this is a human problem. This exists in everybody. So I didn't necessarily see it equally in others. And so anyways, eventually it's like you just come to realize that it's no way to live. And I did receive some support to essentially develop a language that I could get a grip on this. That's why I use the word anger so much, or emotions. And I realized that this is it. I mean, every single human being has this anger that's passed down to them from their parents, from their mothers and their fathers. And I realized that I had to forgive my mother and my father, especially my mother, because that's the one who, you know, that's the primary influence in a child's life for 7 years. And so that was mainly where I learned to be angry and to be emotional. I allowed myself to be made in my mother's image and likeness, just like my father did. My father was also made in his mother's image and likeness, so he became also very angry and emotional, and basically like not like a man. I mean, actually to such an extent where he was like gay, you know. It's not really gay, it's just anger, it's just evil. It's just the difference between right and wrong. So I had to, you know, and so I went and actually, I realized I had to go and forgive my mother directly, because I had realized that I had essentially become just like her. Because you end up becoming like the thing that you hate. And within that, you realize that you have no right to judge them, you know, that you became just like them, and that they didn't know any better. They couldn't help themselves. So I did that. I forgave my mother. I also forgave my father for not protecting me effectively. especially from my mother. He's dead now, so I just sort of forgave him out loud as though he's with me. And I also forgave my stepfather for the same points. And now that's basically the path that I'm on, is the path of forgiveness. You know, that's where I feel like compelled to express myself. It's not like I want to shout this out to the world and get a bunch of attention or whatever. It's just that I've realized some things about myself and about how people and how things work, and it's been the greatest gift. I had to go through the worst hell imaginable to be able to start to realize it, but you know, now that I began to, this is the course that I'm on, and it's a joyful life to live, not living in your emotions and your feelings and your anger and your thoughts and your imagination. It's wonderful. I mean, and the more I stick with it, the more joyous and natural and wholesome every day becomes. The more life becomes amazing and just, I want to say worth living, but I mean, God, that's too much of an understatement. It's beyond that. And like all of us, I don't know how much time I've got, right? None of us, time is the only currency that you spend that you have no idea what the balance is. So I want to make the most, you know? And of course, my daughter is like a huge inspiration for that as well. I would like her to not have to go through the same extent of anger and possession and confusion and everything that I did. So it's like I'm on the righteous path, so to speak, but it's not righteous as though it's about like right and wrong, as though wrong is even an option. That's the problem, is we want to polarize these two things as though wrong is even a choice. You know, we talk about good and evil as though evil is even real. It's not. It's an illusion. It's a delusion. And you're just living in your head because you haven't let go of your anger. You haven't forgiven. You haven't forgiven your parents, and you haven't forgiven yourself. So, yeah, what can I say? I want to make the most, guys. I want everybody to make the most. Life is... I want to say, I mean, what can I say? It's so good. Life is so good. We just have yet to realize it because everybody's so lost in their heads. Everybody's so lost in their anger. And it makes us evil. It makes us cold as ice. And not that, you know, being a loving, warm person is all about feelings and emotions. That was really the big thing I learned, is that, you know, it's not normal for a man to be emotional and angry. I used to write a blog called An Alpha Male's Journey to Life, because I kind of lived in that false image of being an alpha male, and that was it was like I fooled myself, because that's what we present. That's the image we present in this world of what it is to be an alpha male. You know, it's a character, and you know, and because I did things like play sports, or you know, I dated lots of women. I was a drummer. Like, you know, you can do all kinds of activities that it's like, oh, those are man activities, and now you're a man apparently if you do these things. But it has nothing to do with being a man. Being a man means living without emotions, without thoughts. It means not living in your head and in your imagination, so that you can be stable. And within that, you accept that you are inherently good. This was the thing that I did to myself for so many years, is I demonized myself because I believed that this anger was who I am. And I demonized other men for that and believed that that anger is who they are. And because I just didn't see it. And so within that is like I accepted that inherently I and other men were evil. And I mean, my God, I couldn't be further from the truth. Guys, I've been so incredibly unfair to men, and through that to myself, because I mean, what does that do to your own self-image, right? When you do that. I lived double standards my whole life, where I would worship women, I would put them on a pedestal. I would not even be able to admit to myself their evil and their anger and wickedness. And man, oh man, I treated men pretty badly my whole life. I mean, not that I didn't make mistakes with women, but one way that I knew I was really brainwashed and not really being fair was I had so much guilt over some of the mistakes I had made with the women in my life. I mean, so much guilt for whatever mistakes in relationships and things. And yet I look at the things that I've done to men in my life, and I mean, they're horrible. I've done some horrible things to men. Like far, far worse than the things I've done to any woman. And yet there was no guilt, no shame, no self-judgment about that. And so, yeah, that has huge implications for how I would also treat myself as a man. And I can't accept that. I can't accept and allow that anymore again, especially with a young daughter, because I have to be the best I can be for her and for everyone around me. And if I don't accept and see myself as inherently good, if I don't accept and see my nature as inherently good and recognize that I don't have to try to be good. I don't have to put on an act of being good. I don't have to choose good, because you can only choose to be something that you're not. You can only choose to be good and try to be good. That's the whole nice guy thing, Being a nice guy is not the same as being a good man. And being a nice guy is something you choose. Being good as a man is inherent. You simply have to be able to live it naturally and express yourself. And when I say live naturally, that's just living without thoughts, not living in the imagination, not living in your emotions and your feelings. And within that, you'll see how inherently good you are. You'll see that you are everything to everyone. You're the point that holds this, just like the very fabric of this reality together. And just how much everybody is depending on you in a way. It's like we all depend on each other. And when you let yourself down, you let everybody else down. So anyways, I've gone on for a little while, but I've heard a lot of other people say this lately, so maybe I'm not the only person kind of waking up, but it's like, never has the difference between good and evil been so clear. Never has the simple difference between right and wrong been so clear. And I find that we human beings are masters at overcomplicating everything. We come up with all kinds of words and things to describe things, and we end up creating layers and layers of information, of things that we're focused on that never really it's like the more we create those layers of words and information, the further away we get from actually penetrating the core of ourselves, which is to recognize that basic difference between right and wrong, between good and evil, between having anger and emotions or not. And we miss the simplest thing, the simplest things. Are you good or are you evil? I mean, that's a simple question. It might be hard to answer. You might be in a process, of becoming good. But then at the end of the day, there's only one answer. And from my perspective, all human beings are fallen until they stand up, because this is how virtually everybody is existing in this world. So simplicity is a useful tool if you want to get to the truth of yourself. Simplicity, transparency, being honest with yourself. And that may take a lot of vulnerability. It might feel like you're like risking everything, like a virtual death. But the truth is you have nothing to risk or lose, because you're already existing in anger. You're already living in a fallen state. You already are essentially the walking dead. For as long as you're living in your imagination and your thoughts and your anger, you don't exist. You're in hell, and you're creating hell. So the truth is that you have nothing to lose by letting go of your anger and forgiving. And I recommend this to virtually every single human being on the planet. Go and forgive your mother and your father, even if they're not alive anymore. Forgive them, because within forgiving them, you're forgiving yourself. You're understanding that you became just like them, just like that which you are forgiving, and that you had no right to judge them, and that within doing so, you're only judging yourself. All right, that's it for today, guys. See you next time.